We're going to look at it. So foul there on Indiana, on Hull there. But then that is a technical.
That is a technical. Dead ball, contact technical.
It's a little surprising to see so many of these happen in one game because...
Oh, and I don't like the way Lexie Hull...
Picture this. Blood on the court, a player down, and the ref somehow calling a technical foul on the victim.
Kayla McBride this time around? Last time these two shared the court, McBride's elbow smashed Hull in the face, and the refs somehow penalized Hull.
2 minutes ago, we witnessed one of the most satisfying moments of revenge in WNBA history when Lexie Hull absolutely humiliated Kayla McBride with a crossover so devastating it left McBride questioning her career choices. But this wasn't just any ordinary ankle breaker. This was justice served ice cold, and it happened in front of a crowd that had been waiting months for payback.
Final score, Fever 83, Lynx 72. Indiana ends the regular season with an exclamation point. Fever have won 3 in a row as they enter the playoff.
The Indiana Fever just demolished the Minnesota Lynx 83-72. But what everyone's talking about isn't the final score. It's how Hull turned the tables on the same player who bloodied her face and somehow got away with it. You want to know how satisfying revenge can be? Ask any Fever fan who watched Lexie Hull cross up Kayla McBride so badly that McBride's ankles are probably still untying themselves. But to understand why this moment sent shockwaves through the WNBA community, we need to rewind and see how Indiana got here, because this story is about so much more than one crossover. 3 months ago, if you told anyone...
A lot of people will talk about Nafisa not playing, but I think they're really good without her. You know, they're just a really great basketball team. So I think it was a big win for us because they set the bar high standard-wise. We know what to expect when it comes to Minnesota Lynx, and so I think going into the playoffs, it was big for us because being able to know guarding Courtney Williams, knowing that her thing is a pull-up, knowing that now instead of not knowing that, it's big for us because we give ourselves a chance, and if they are the standard, we get to see what
Indiana Fever would finish with a winning record and enter the playoffs with momentum. They would have laughed in your face. This team was supposed to be a rebuilding project, maybe competitive in a few years. Instead, they just proved that heart can beat talent, that depth can overcome star power, and that sometimes the best revenge is success itself. But first, let's talk about the crisis that nearly destroyed everything. How does a basketball team survive when nearly half its rotation disappears? That's the question the Indiana Fever had to answer the hard way, game after game, as players kept dropping like dominoes. Caitlin Clark, gone with a groin injury that started as nagging and ended season-ending. Sophie Cunningham, sidelined by...
That I've been impressed with these guys since even the offseason. Really, the ones that I was able to work out with in the offseason is how hard they work. There's a work ethic and there's a work style. And to approach everything in the same way, to be so energetic, enthusiastic, and dedicated every day. And I felt that way in training camp too. There weren't any days where I had to bring that out of them. So I think it's the nature of the women that we brought into this organization to continue to just bust their butts. And
MCL tear that crushed her momentum. Sydney Carlson's ACL gave out completely. Chloe Baby's knee couldn't hold up to the grind. Ari McDonald fractured her foot. Think about that for a second. Those 5 players alone could start for most teams in this league. Instead, they were all stuck watching from street clothes while their teammates tried to hold everything together with duct tape and pure determination. This wasn't just bad luck anymore. This was basketball disaster on a scale that would make most franchises fold their hands and plan for next season. No amount of preseason...
All the other things like offensive rebounding that she can do.
Knocked away. Boston comes up with a steal. Here is Mitchell veering through the paint and lays it in.
She's so quick, and especially when she gets out in the open floor, you'll see her coming down. The quick left to right crossover just gets by. I thought she was sprinting. I didn't think she was lumbering.
It was a lumber sprint.
Up for the big girl.
Mitchell like a blur.
In preparation could have readied Indiana for this level of devastation. They went from having depth to having prayers, from rotation management to just hoping anyone, could step up and fill the massive holes that kept appearing. But here's what separates good organizations from great ones. When the worst possible scenario becomes reality, do you crumble or do you find a way to rise? The announcement that broke hearts from Indianapolis to Iowa City came down like a hammer. Caitlin Clark's season was officially over. The groin injury that had been labeled as manageable, something she could play through, had become
Never done that. 7 of them went on to win the title. As Boston gets free and lays it in.
She will be on my first team.
Boston in the paint, sneaks through 2 and lays it in.
permanent roadblock. This was supposed to be her rookie campaign that fast-tracked the Fever into national relevance. Instead, it ended with a press release, not a playoff debut. Clark wasn't just a ticket seller or a marketing tool. She was the heartbeat of this franchise, the player who brought energy to practices, hope to fans, and legitimacy to a program that had been wandering in the wilderness. Losing her felt like losing the soul of the season. The emotional toll rippled through the locker room and into the stands, where fans who had believed in something...
You're done with the MVP, okay? Bow, bow, bow! Hell yeah. You already know what it is. Dubs in the chat, you already know what it is. You already know what it is. Let's go to the playoff and some moment.
Suddenly faced the reality that their dreams might vanish as quickly as they had appeared. But while everyone focused on what Indiana had lost, something remarkable was happening with what they had left. Kelsey Mitchell wasn't just picking up extra shots. She was transforming into a completely different player. When your star goes down, you can either shrink into your role or expand beyond what anyone thought possible. Mitchell chose expansion, and the results were historic. She didn't just become the team's leading scorer. She became the franchise's most productive scorer ever, surpassing even Tamika Catching's legendary single-season numbers. 20 points per game, night after night, while carrying ball-handling duties, while getting double-teamed, while having every scout report in the league screaming her name at opponents. Mitchell provided the offensive punch that kept playoff hopes alive when they should have flatlined, and she did it with the kind of consistency that separates good players from franchise cornerstones. Then there was Aliyah Boston, quietly becoming the anchor this team desperately needed. 15 points.
Before the playoffs start Sunday tonight, it's regular season game 44 of 44 for the Fever as they host the WNBA's best team in 2025, the Minnesota Lynx.
8 rebounds per game over the final stretch doesn't just show up in box scores. It represents reliability in chaos, stability when everything else was shifting. Boston set a new franchise record for single-season rebounds while playing a role that demanded she cover gaps everywhere. Whatever mess the lineups turned into, Boston was the constant in the middle, the insurance policy that kept Indiana's defense from completely falling apart. But here's where the story gets interesting. Instead of crumbling under the weight of all these injuries, something clicked in the Fever locker room. The setback stopped being viewed as a death sentence.
Up against Aliyah Boston, the ball is tipped, and it's time to hoop at Indy.
A 10-0 run to start this game for Indiana, and Minnesota wants a timeout.
Powers up top, tees it up, 3. It's good! Energy!
Kicks it out, Powers. You bet! Back-to-back threes from Aerial Powers.
The Fever double up the Lynx in the first quarter. It's Indiana 28.
And started becoming motivation. Players who were supposed to be role fillers suddenly became nightly contributors. Hardship signings started putting up double-digit performances. Bench players claimed bigger minutes and wore them like badges of honor. This wasn't just roster shuffling. This was a complete philosophical transformation. The frustration over injuries, the constant lineup changes, even the questionable referee calls, all of it became fuel. When you have nothing left to lose, you discover what you're really made of, and Indiana discovered they were made of something tougher than anyone expected. The turning point
is 4 for 4 from three-point range. Mitchell connects on a 3. Sims leaning jumper is good.
Kelsey driving left, puts it in off the backboard.
Will to it for the first half. Indiana shoots 58% from the floor.
It was clear when they stopped seeing obstacles as reasons to fail and started treating them as opportunities to prove doubters wrong. That shift in perspective changed how they played, how they prepared, and most importantly, how fans viewed them. By the time Minnesota rolled into town, the circumstances weren't the story anymore. The story was resilience and how it had transformed a broken roster into something dangerous. Why did this matchup against Minnesota feel bigger than just another regular season game? Because it was never just another game. The Lynx came in sitting at the top of the standing.
Mitchell, open three. It's good. You can. Kelsey Mitchell is a hooper.
Passes Dantas left corner three. Bullseye. The shot clock. Boston left block. Makes it in.
The gold standard everyone measured themselves against. This wasn't about pride anymore. This was about survival in the playoff picture. About proving that all the fight they'd shown through adversity could translate against elite competition. Indiana was already locked into the postseason, but seeding mattered. The difference between the 6th seed and something lower could mean the difference between a favorable first-round matchup and an early exit. More than that, it was about proving they belonged at the grown-ups table, that their late-season surge wasn't fool's gold, but the real thing. The context made it even more striking. Just weeks earlier, the Fever had dropped 4 of their last 5 games. Momentum was gone, fan excitement was cooling, and national conversations were circling back to whether Caitlin Clark's absence had gutted whatever legitimate shot they had at steady progress. Teams in that position usually collapse. Indiana decided to do the opposite. They strung together 3 straight grind-out victories, each one a reflection of a roster that had learned how to redefine itself. The Minnesota game was the 3rd of those wins, and it mattered because it came against a team nobody thought Indiana could handle at this stage of their development. From the opening tip, the Fever looked like they had more than hope. They had a plan and the confidence to execute it. A 10-0 run to start the game wasn't just hot shooting. It was a statement that they weren't hanging around waiting for Minnesota to take control. They were dictating pace, controlling tempo, and playing like the home team should. By half
with the MVP, okay? Bow, bow, bow! Hell yeah. You already know what it is. Dubs in the chat, you already know what it is. You already know what it is. Let's go to the playoff with some momentum.
Time, they had built a double-digit cushion and never once looked shaky about protecting it. Minnesota tried to find their rhythm, but cold shooting mixed with Indiana's pressured defense turned possessions into wasted opportunities. The Lynx managed only 2 made threes out of 20 attempts, and every miss seemed to reinforce that this was Indiana's night. But the real story was where the production came from. Odyssey Sims, who came in as a hardship signing just weeks ago, finished with 15 points. That's not just filling roster space. That's coming off the bench and playing like someone determined to prove she still belongs at this level. Aerial Powers buried back-to-back threes in the second half that swung momentum permanently back to Indiana when Minnesota threatened to make it interesting. Natasha Howard covered every gap that showed up when you're missing half your rotation. Rebounding, switching on defense, hitting shots when possession stalled. The bench that people dismissed earlier in the year became the glue that kept energy consistent throughout 40 minutes. And through it all, even in street clothes, Caitlin Clark was right there orchestrating from the sideline. Cameras caught her calling timeouts, waving her hands like a coach, giving out instructions, even engaging with referees. Teammates looked to her for cues, and it gave off the unmistakable sense that her impact hadn't slowed just because she couldn't suit up. Coach Kate might not have been an official title, but she earned it that night. But none of that is why social media exploded. None of that is why fans are still talking 2 minutes after the final buzzer. The moment everyone will remember happened in the second quarter when Lexie Hull found herself matched up against Kayla McBride at the top of the key. To understand why that moment mattered, you need to know what happened the last time these two shared the court. McBride's elbow crashed into Hull's face. Blood hit the floor. Confusion filled the arena. And then came the twist that made everyone's jaw drop. The referees hit Hull with a technical foul instead of punishing McBride. The whole scene turned a tough night into an outrageous one that left fans feeling insulted on Hull's behalf. It became another piece of evidence about the perception that Indiana doesn't get fair treatment, that somehow the Fever were always on the wrong end of questionable calls. Naturally, when they drew Minnesota again, all eyes locked on Hull. Every Indiana fan wanted to know how she would respond. Would she shy away from the matchup? Would she let that low point hang over her performance? The answer came with one dribble to her left, a hesitation move that sent McBride lunging off balance, and then the moment that made an entire arena erupt. McBride's legs tangled, her balance disappeared, and she hit the court while Hull calmly continued her drive. The crowd roared. Cameras captured everything, and within minutes the clip was exploding across social media platforms. This wasn't just basketball anymore. This was karma playing out in real time, justice written between two players in motion. Everyone who had been disgusted by that earlier technical foul now had a new clip to point to. Instead of being the victim, Hull had flipped the script and delivered the kind of highlight that makes careers. But even beyond that viral moment, Hull's impact throughout the game mattered just as much. She stayed glued to Minnesota's backcourt, forcing contested shots, deflecting passes, disrupting their rhythm. Her defensive presence helped limit the league's top offensive team to one of their worst performances of the year. The crossover got the headlines, but the complete performance proved this wasn't lucky. It was earned. What makes Hull's story resonate is how perfectly it mirrors Indiana's entire journey. Written off, underestimated, hit with circumstances that didn't make sense, yet somehow finding ways to shine when pressure mounted. The Fever kept getting cast as underdogs, and just like Hull, they refused to crawl into the background when adversity struck. Her highlight against McBride symbolized the spirit that carried this entire franchise through every injury, every questionable whistle, every doubt that piled up throughout the season. That single crossover captured the grit that delivered their first winning record in nearly a decade. The final numbers tell the story of legitimate progress. 24 wins against 20 losses means something because it's the first time since 2015 the franchise has finished above 500. 9 years of false starts, wasted opportunities, and rebuilds that never took hold. And suddenly the pieces are snapping into place in ways that feel sustainable. This isn't about celebrating mediocrity. It's about recognizing that a cultural reset has happened. Players know it, coaches know it, and most importantly, fans who kept showing up in Indianapolis all year know it. The foundation has been poured, and what we're seeing now feels like the first real step in Indiana's climb back to relevance. As the Fever enter the playoffs with momentum building and fans buzzing with excitement, they carry something that can't be measured in statistics. They carry the promise of what happens when a team refuses to accept limitations, when players step up instead of stepping back, and when justice finally gets served on a basketball court. Lexie Hull's crossover wasn't just revenge. It was validation that this franchise is ready to make noise when it matters most.